Hey guys, it's Marcus here from TalkSober.com, and today what I'd like to do is go over a paper that I found in one of my notebooks entitled The 20 Reasons That I Drink and the One Reason I Stopped Drinking. Now, the one reason I stopped drinking I added years later. This was a list that my therapist had me compile because she was trying to help me stop drinking. So, here are the 20 reasons that I said I drank. Number one was to relax. At the end of a long day, it was really hard for me to sit back and relax because there were so many things to do. I found that with a couple of drinks, I could relax and chill out and usually fall asleep on the couch, which was pretty relaxing. Number two was to shut off my thoughts. You see, back when I was drinking, I was plagued with overwhelming thoughts. I would think about things I said, things I did, what I didn't say, what I didn't do. I would think about work, things that had to be done. I would think of all these kind of things. Guilt. When I was hungover, I would think about things that I thought I did, or I'd recount every minute of every second of every single thing that I did while I was drinking that I couldn't remember. And sometimes my mind would even make things up. So I would drink to shut these thoughts up because I didn't know another way. I even went into therapy, and I remember there was this Zen relaxing meditation guy. And of course, he had a stutter, right? So he stuttered, and I'm sitting there like, dude, would you please spit out the answer to my problem? But he never did. And he probably did have the answer, but I couldn't shut my thoughts off long enough to actually listen. So that was number two, which was a big drinking trigger for me, which was being able to shut off my thoughts. Number three, some of you might be able to relate to, I was unable to eat. You see, when I was going through all my mental challenges and all my struggles and mental illness, or whatever you want to call it, I wasn't able to eat in front of others, and sometimes I wasn't even able to eat in front of myself, right? I dealt with a eating disorder early in life because I was abused with food. More about that later. But I would go to a restaurant to eat my lunch because I like to go to lunch every day by myself and kind of collect my thoughts. And in order to be able to eat, I thought I had to have 2 or 3 beers or drinks or whatever it was. And what would usually end up happening is I'd have too many drinks and, would be kind of useless the rest of the day. But nevertheless, one of the reasons, number 3, that I drank was to be able to eat in front of people and by myself. Number 4 was a big one. The 4th reason I drank was to lower my anxiety. You see, I was a very anxious person, especially when I left the house. I was always wiry. I always acted like I had about 50 cups of coffee, even though I only had half a cup. And I was very anxious. I couldn't sit still. I always thought everyone was watching me. I always thought everything was about me. I was jittery. If I got up to speak in front of people, I was anxious. And so I drank to lower my anxiety, which was a big deal, right? How else could you shut off anxiety without taking something? More about this later, but that was a big reason that I drank. And here I am 2.5 years later, and my anxiety's down, and I haven't drank in 2.5 years, which is kind of cool. Number 5 was a big one for me. This was a tough one to give up when I finally decided to stop drinking. And that was that I like the taste. I mean, all the microbrews, all the different beers and all the stuff out there was really, really good, and I liked it. And I enjoyed it and made me feel good, right? That's why we all drink and do things in the first place, because it makes us feel good. And for me, I like the taste of certain types. I remember up in Northern California in the Bay Area, we had this Pliny the Elder beer, which I loved, and they only had it in stock once or twice a year when the guy decided to make it. It was a little small microbrew, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed different microbrews. But towards the end of my drinking, it all started to taste the same. And, I switched over to vodka, which I absolutely detest vodka. But I drank it because it was easier to hide in, different drinks than the other stuff. Another one, I like to enjoy it while cooking. I would always cook with wine. This is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I enjoyed it while cooking. I always like to cook with wine. Sometimes it ended up in the food, sometimes it didn't. But nevertheless, I like to relax and cook and everything like that. Number 7, which was a very big one, and probably a big one for a lot of you people out there listening, is help with sleep. You see, if you have racing thoughts and you're kind of an anxious person, it's very difficult to go to bed at night. You can't fall asleep, and it's just tough. And so I would drink a few to help me fall asleep, and sometimes drink few too many, and then I'd wake up in the middle of the night and my cycle of sleep would never be normal. But nevertheless, that was one of the things that I thought drinking helped me with, was being able to sleep. Which brings us to number 8. I was always a guilty person. I grew up in the church where they said, oh, hey, if you think about doing this, then you're terrible. If this thought crosses your mind, you're terrible. And I'd be sitting there, and sometimes I'd be in church, and all of a sudden I'd think, hey, you could just slap the person in front of you sitting here at church, just slap them on the head. And it would be a thought that crossed my mind, and because of all my church upbringing and because of the way our culture is revolving around guilt, I would feel really guilty, like I was a bad person. And so I would have this guilt about things that I thought about doing, things that I did, things that I thought I did but didn't do, because when you drink to excess, your memory gets all messed up and you don't really know what's real and what's fake. You're kind of in a dream world. But one of the reasons I would drink is to deal with the guilt. The tough part about dealing with the guilt is that when you first start drinking for the day, the guilt kind of gets worse when you start drinking, and it doesn't really go away until you completely pass out, and then you wake up the next day with even more guilt, which means you have to drink that one away, which means it gets worse, which means you pass out, and it's a big, huge cycle. And I would go through these 3-week cycles where, I'd drink to get rid of the guilt, but it didn't work anymore. Number 9 was to be able to focus on work. You see, in my job, I was self-employed, which means I didn't really have anyone telling me, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z or you're fired. I had to figure out X, Y, and Z on my own, and I had to go do it. And I felt like, being an anxious, wiry person, I wasn't able to sit down and actually focus. I had the ADD where I thought about a million things and I started a million projects, but I never finished one. And I felt like alcohol helped me slow down and actually get things done. And for a while, it kind of did that. All right, now we are on. Now, number 10 was a big one because I was always living in a reactive mode. You see, if something happened to me, if someone called me a name, if someone said something that irritated me, if we did bad at work or someone wanted a refund or someone did a chargeback or whatever, I would get all flustered and I'd react. Instead of, responding and slowing down and calculate, I was always react. It was like a frightened chihuahua, always on the attack, right? He's like, okay, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? What's going to happen here? And I would be less reactive if I drank. I'd be able to slow down and calculate. Now, of course, I didn't always say the things that I meant or say the things I wanted to say while I was drinking, but it made me a little less reactive. It allowed me to slow down. Number 11 was I thought I was a lot more fun, right? I would go out to my business meetings and I'd go dancing and I'd drink, and you get this vision in your mind that you're the dancing king, and sometimes I ended up being the dancing king, and sometimes I ended up being the dancing fool. But nevertheless, I thought that I couldn't have fun without alcohol. I thought that alcohol made you fun, and like in those alcohol commercials, you're kind of the talk of the party, the great funny guy and everything like that. Kind of like that dream scene in Dumb and Dumber where he's in front of the family and he's all happy and he's like, hey, check it out, I'm funny, I'm making everyone laugh, I'm throwing peanuts in my face and lighting my farts on fire, and everyone thinks I'm great. And that's kind of how I thought I was when I drank. I thought I was a lot more fun. I thought without drinking I wouldn't be a fun person. I'd be this boring guy in the corner with nothing to do. But throughout time I actually found that it's more fun to be sober because you actually remember things. Number 12, I think we're on number 12, is self-loathing. Now, this is an interesting one because you might say, well, why would you drink to induce self-loathing? What would be the benefit? I mean, Marcus, self-loathing sucks. Well, when you deal with alcoholism and you got a touch of narcissism or a lot of narcissism or whatever you want to call what I have, right? Self-loathing was kind of like paying your dues, right? I would do bad things and then I would self-loathe about bad things, which made me feel like I was paying for my sins, so to speak, which in actuality it's not. It's just self-torture, self-punishment without the desire to do better next time, right? Because I knew, hey, you know what, next time I'm probably going to end up drinking, I'm probably going to be an idiot, I'm probably going to hurt the ones I love again. But if I self-loathe about it, isn't that kind of paying for it? Isn't that kind of doing something? So in essence, drinking to do the self-loathing, which I would have days of self-loathing and depression and things like that, was actually doing something for me. Even though it wasn't productive, even though it wasn't good, in my mind I felt like, hey, you know what? At least you're paying for it. All right, so that was number 12. Number 13 was that it was easy to be a victim. You see, one of the things that I learned early in life that I was taught by my family was never take responsibility for damn near anything. I was taught that, hey, if you got something, legal trouble, money trouble, whatever, find a way to weasel out of it. And for me, it was easy to be a victim when I drank. I could drink and say my money problems are because of the IRS or the government. And my money problems were because of my students. They didn't do enough, or because of this, or because of that. It was never because I just didn't do what I was supposed to do. It was never just because sometimes I was lazy, or sometimes I didn't work hard enough, right? And it was easy to be a victim. I was a victim of my wife. I was a victim of society. I was a victim of the government. Everything was against me, as if the world cared that much about me, which it really doesn't, right? But I would go through there, I would drink, and I would become a victim, and it would make it easier because now nothing's my fault. Oh, woe is me, poor me, poor me, pour me another drink while I cry a river and live in my victim mentality. We're going to talk more about the victim mentality, which brings us to number 14. One of the reasons I drank, because it was socially acceptable. I was an adult, it was an adult beverage, and everyone accepted it, and it was cool to have during the football games, even though I didn't really care that much about football, but I did like the hockey games, and I had it during the hockey games, and I had it out at lunch, I had it everywhere and anywhere. And it was socially acceptable. So I said, hey, you know what? I want to be socially acceptable, and since everyone's got a drink, this is what I need to do. Number 15 was a big one. That was depression. I drank to get rid of depression, and I drank to go into depression. Because depression, you know, you kind of get depressed, and then you don't feel like you need to do anything. You just wallow in it and wallow in it and wallow in it. And, you know, it's easy. Just like the being a victim, it's easy to be depressed, and it's easy to just kind of stop and do nothing. Number 16, which was a big one, is I drank to escape. I drank to escape my life. I drank to escape the person I had become, the person I didn't want to be. I drank to escape the thoughts of the person I wanted to be who I wasn't being. I drank to escape just about everything, feelings, fights, everything. I drank to escape my life. I drank because I wanted to get away. I drank because I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to feel. I wanted to be numb. I wanted to go to sleep. I wished that it would just make me pass out for a lot longer than it actually did. But nevertheless, I drank to escape. I was running and running and running, and unfortunately, the alcohol was following close behind, and it was not allowing me to escape because it was there to look my ugly face in the mirror, or whatever you want to call it, and say, no, you have to face this, you have to face this. And it's building and building and building. And it was like a snowball running down a mountain saying, hey, you can escape just for now, but this thing is going to plow into you and suck you up and take you with it, and you're going to be in this huge cycle. And it kept going and kept going, and I couldn't escape even though I thought I was escaping. So when you drink to escape, remember, you only escape for a little bit of time, and sometimes escaping is harder than just facing up to the stuff. Number 17, I drank to slow down. As you can tell from the way I talk, I'm kind of like Jojo, the idiot circus boy with a pretty new pet. But at any rate, I'm kind of fast, I'm kind of hyper, and I drank to slow down. Right? Everyone in life was kind of chilled out, and I was kind of like a wiry dude, and I needed to slow down. I needed to relax. I needed to say, wait, pause, let's start making sense. And I drank to slow down, and I liked the way that it felt when I was slowed down. Now, years later, being sober, I found out other ways to slow down that didn't involve alcohol or pills or anything like that. I was able to just slow down on my own. And we're going to talk about this in the videos as well. And number 18, which is my number 20 for some reason, I had number 20, was to be motivated. I felt like drinking was like rolling up my sleeves. I'd take my box of beer into my office, which was built in the backyard, and I'd go to work, right? That beer was my suitcase, and I'd drink, and I'd be motivated. I'd be ready to go. Number 19, I'll just make up two more while we're here. Number 19 was because I felt good, right? I drank to feel good. I didn't feel good during the day. When I woke up, I was, hungover every day, and I drank early in the morning to deal with those feelings because I didn't want to deal with them, right? So it would make me feel good. After all, that's why we do most of the things in life, is because we want to feel good. We want a bunch of money in the bank, not because we like numbers, but because it feels good to say, well, I'm okay. Or we want to have a spouse to come home to that loves us because it feels good to be loved, and different things like that. And number 20, I drank because I had to drink, right? I had to. There was no choice. Once I was in the cycle, once I was in the death grip, I had to have it. There was no other way to cope with life without having alcohol. And those are the 20 reasons that I drank. This is a list I wrote about 3 years ago, if I had to guess correctly, maybe a little bit more than 3 years ago. And the one reason I don't drink anymore is because none of that stuff really works. All 20 of the reasons might seem like they work right now. It might seem like, hey, you know what? I got in a fight with the spouse, go drink. It's going to make it better, but it doesn't work. And what happens is when you continue to drink, these things get worse. Because when I drank to lower my anxiety, right, I would overcompensate. And then the next day, I would be more anxious than before. I would require more alcohol than before. Shutting off the thoughts, my brain was trained, hey, you know what? The thoughts slow down, so we need to speed them up. Why are we so slow? Then without the alcohol, they'd be racing like crazy. Help with sleep, an alcoholic never gets good sleep, which is part of the reason we go into alcoholic insanity. Self-loathing, all of this stuff stopped working. It doesn't work. For an alcoholic, these things don't work, and that's why I don't drink, because I don't want to be in the delusional world thinking that alcohol is the cure-all for my problems. And if I kept drinking, I would absolutely end up dead, which was on the path I was on rapidly. So the reason I don't drink today is because I know that I'm an alcoholic, and I know what my brain does. Normal people don't sit around thinking about the 20 reasons that they drink because they don't have problems with drinking. They just drink normally. Alcoholics, on the other hand, drink because they want to do something. It does something for them more so than the average person. And what I want to tell you today is that all the reasons that you think you might drink, all the reasons you think drinking is helping you and doing good for you, are not really real. It's not really working the way that it works. It might work for a few seconds, but again, that snowball is coming after you, and soon enough it's going to catch up with you. So again, I'm Marcus from Talk Sober. These are the 20 reasons that I drank, and the one reason I didn't is because the 20 reasons didn't work anymore. So subscribe to my channel, check out our other videos, go over to talksober.com, take the alcoholic quiz, and see if you need help and see what to do. We got tons of tools for you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.